Thank you for all being part of our Substack Live today. And we are joined with Dr. Angela Rasmussen. So I really want to just kind of get started by saying thank you so much. We had a great talk last week just to kind of prep for this. And we should have done it as a bourbon happy hour, really.
Yeah, we should have.
Yeah.
That was an oversight on our part.
Major oversight, right? Yeah. So, but I just want to kind of get started. So tell everybody a little bit about, how you got into virology and like your career path and without getting too much in the weeds, but like more about your emphasis and the scope of your research and your work these last, most of your career.
Sure. You don't want to hear like a 45-minute biography of
I was thinking
myself?
more like 3 to 4 minutes, but that's okay. It's up,
Yeah.
it's your show now, so you can do whatever you want.
Well, yeah, I'll save that for another one of my 6,000 word essays that started off being, about regulatory control. And the next thing I know, I'm talking about my piano recitals from when I was 10. But yeah, I'm Angie Rasmussen. I'm a virologist. I work at the University of Saskatchewan. I have a lab. I study emerging diseases. I'm originally from the US. I'm from the Seattle area. I did my PhD at Columbia, studied rhinovirus, the common cold, and poliovirus in Vincent Racaniello's lab there. Then did my postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Washington, started working on a hepatitis C virus, then became research faculty there. Ended up moving back to Columbia when I became research faculty in 2012 at the University of Washington. I started working on emerging viruses, and that's what I work on now. So I work on basically anything that could cause a pandemic or an epidemic that is not normally circulating in most parts of the world. Stuff like Ebola, avian flu, MERS coronavirus. It's not an emerging virus anymore, but SARS coronavirus too, the virus.
All the healthy shit, right?
All the healthy shit,
All
yeah.
the healthy shit.
I
Right.
mean, depending on who you ask, some of the people who are in charge of the Department of Health and Human Services now and key agencies do think that this is healthy shit. However, it's not. And I don't recommend getting any of these viruses. And I actually go way out of my way not to get them myself when I'm working with them. But that's what I do. I study
Yeah,
how
it
the host
kinda would ruin your life a little
interacts.
bit, huh? Yeah.
I mean, there is a vaccine for Ebola. We
Right.
don't work with Ebola currently, though, because our maximum containment lab is not yet online. But I do.
No, and that would need max that's like a super max security prison to work in that lab, yeah.
It's not really quite like that. It's actually it's quite boring. The higher the level of biocontainment you go, the more boring the work gets.
Mm,
Actually, it's really just a lot of checking and double checking and being very, very careful and memorizing protocols and thinking about those protocols constantly. So it's actually a lot of work, but it's really focused work on stuff that's actually not it's not that complicated once you're fully
right.
trained to do it. You do most of the complicated part, the thinking and the data analysis outside of containment.
So, one of the first questions I wanted to pose to you, and I went over this last Monday with Melissa Corrigan in our show, but I wanted to talk about really I mean, you're literally working in the lab with these really harmful viruses. Now, I'm not a virologist. I'm a surgeon wound care specialist. This is way outside my area of expertise, which is why I'm talking to Angie. So, one of the first questions I have is, can you like let everybody know, like really with where we are right now with the measles epidemic, right? With the measles, I don't want to say epidemic, but lack of vaccine
It is an
pandemic.
epidemic.
It
It's
is
an
an
epidemic. By
Um,
definition, it's an epidemic.
the question really focuses more on like how is this really going to affect both US and Canadian national security? Like how much of this does this pose a risk to us because of bad policy?
It, I mean, this poses a huge risk to us, like it in so many different levels, right? So most of us, most people, around our age, whatever age range we're in, but most people, up until, well, 25 years ago, 26 years ago, the US eliminated measles, which
You're
means, and I think a lot of people don't know what elimination means. Elimination means that you have no longer have any kind of endemic transmission of this virus. So we can have measles cases that get imported into the US, but they don't spread because the vaccination rates are so high that we actually can't support endemic transmission of measles. So it's been like that for 26
right. So
years.
you would agree with the statement that as of the year 2000, at that time, both the US and Canada were over 95% immunized against MMR.
That's precisely well, they were immunized with the MMR
With
against
the MMR
the
vaccine,
virus.
right, so, yes.
Yeah,
We had herd immunity for MMR.
that's right.
Uh,
So measles is such a contagious virus that you have to have 95% vaccine uptake basically in order to prevent it from spreading. So yes, so 25 years ago, 26 years ago, we did have that level of uptake, and measles was not able to spread. Since then, and then really this started in 1998. In 1998, Andrew Wakefield, British doctor, published a paper that said that the MMR vaccine gave people autism. And it's actually really interesting. It's not just the MMR, it's not the measles vaccine,
right.
it's the MMR, because his belief was that the combination of those three vaccines, because the MMR is measles, mumps, rubella. It's a trivalent. It means it has three targets, live attenuated vaccine, which means that all three of those are live viruses. They
So
will
his whole belief
replicate, they
right,
won't
so
cause
his whole
disease.
belief was that basically we were safer with single valency vaccines. Like, you just
Correct.
go and
So
get like, when you go get your hepatitis B vaccine, it's the only vaccine you get, or you
that's
just
right.
get a polio vaccine, that's all you get.
That's right. Except so the thing about these three vaccines, right? These are live attenuated vaccines, and the reason they were developed when they were in the 1950s and 1960s was that they can all grow in eggs. We didn't really have good cell culture techniques to produce these vaccines at scale in cells the way that we can now. So they all had to be grown in eggs. And so individually, three different groups developed these three live attenuated vaccines by just passaging them through eggs repeatedly. And they get less pathogenic for people, but they still will replicate and you can still grow them in the eggs. And so then they discovered that, kids don't like getting all of these shots on a visit, not because it's bad for them to get a bunch of shots at once, but because kids just generally don't like it. I mean, most people don't like going in and getting stuck with a bunch of shots on the same day.
But it's
So
okay for
they
our
said,
military.
"You think we can combine these three?" And
But it's okay for the militaries because when you first go into the military, as Melissa was explaining to me, and same thing happened to me, you walk down a hallway and they are just plugging you. I mean, they're hitting both arms. You're literally walking down a hallway and they are just jamming needles into you as you walk down this hallway, and they don't care what they give you. You're getting flu, Hep B, MMR, tetanus, you're getting everything. Typhoid, rubella, chicken
I should
pox,
have joined the
measles.
military. It sounds like a party to me. I
It's
mean,
a
I'm a vaccine
attenuated
enthusiast,
virus party.
but I've already had all those vaccines too. It sounds like me just going to a travel clinic before I'm going on any
Right.
kind of work trip.
But I did not mean to
But
interrupt, so please continue. So I'm
oh,
sorry.
no. No, it's okay. I was just saying that, like, what they decided was, what if we could give kids fewer shots? And so they said, well, let's see if it's safe to stick these three viruses together in the same formulation and test it out. And they did a clinical trial, and guess what? It's perfectly safe. So instead of now getting 6 shots, kids only have to get 2 with the MMR. And so what like they want, I mean, this is why it's stupid, is they want to actually go back from 2 shots to 6 shots because for some reason that they can't really explain, the combination of the shots is bad. Except at the same time, they will show like a picture of a baby with like a gazillion needles coming at it, implying that, more shots are bad. So the real problem is
The
not the
culture war.
number of shots or the combination. The real problem is the fact that they just don't like
It's a
vaccines.
it's a culture war.
Yeah, it's a culture war.
It's a culture war on our public health,
I
which
mean, it's a lie is
right.
what it
Yeah.
is. And, in 1998, Andrew Wakefield published his paper in The Lancet, which is a very prestigious medical journal. It's since been retracted, and all 11 of his co-authors voluntarily retracted it before he would, because he refused to retract it and because he's continued to actually spread this around as medical advice. He's lost his license to practice medicine in the UK. And now he's basically a professional anti vaxxer and one of Secretary Kennedy's best friends. And he makes a shitload of money doing this. That's why they've been
So
eroding essentially the vaccination rate over the last 26
so
years.
just to put
And
this in per
eventually, that's caught on enough that there's now enough kids of school age that are
right.
unvaccinated to have
So
these
to
epidemics start.
putting this in perspective, so we have a Secretary of Health and Human Services who's an anti-vaxxer, who has bought into the anti-vax argument by a discredited physician,
British physician.
British physician, and his colleagues who have all retracted the study. Okay,
His
now just
colleagues,
for
I
everybody,
would say Andrew Wakefield's colleagues have nothing to do with this.
right, right, right.
They are not they just wrote the paper
They just helped co-write
initially.
the paper, right. So just to
Yeah.
give everybody an idea, so the Lancet in the United States is like one of the top journals for pharmaceuticals. Like,
It's like the
w
New England Journal of
it's like the
Medicine.
New England Journal of Medicine for pharmacy,
Yeah.
for the most part, and
But no, they also have
well,
quite a
yeah, but
few
for most of it, it's
clinical
mostly about the drugs. It's really mostly where the drug research goes, and it's for the most part, like 90% of it is the drug formulary type of research, but so so now this is now transcended from RFK Jr. to the anti-vax king to now the ACIP, which I know you've testified in front of.
No, no,
Oh,
no.
no, no,
I have not.
you've opined about it.
I've given a public comment at
Correct.
ACE
Public
meetings.
comments at the
Mhm.
meetings, right? This it's like it's just very similar like a MedCAC, what I would do when they wanna change a policy, they have to have an open meeting that we have to register for, and we get 5 minutes to do a
Yeah,
PowerPoint presentation, and in those 5 minutes, while the occupational medicine physician who knows nothing about the specialty is the one sitting on the panel.
right.
Um, right. So, in this case, just go over everybody what the AICP is, now
The
that we're kind of getting
ACIP.
into
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices is an external independent panel of vaccinology experts. Basically, it's clinicians, it's scientists, it's people who have previously worked to develop vaccines, vaccine manufacturers, it's members of the community. There's members of the community who are liaisons to it. But generally, the ACIP itself are, a group of like 17 to 20 experts who do not get paid. They get reimbursed for their travel, but they don't get
Mhm.
paid. They're extensively vetted for conflicts of interest, and they meet 3 times a year to go over basically all of the data for every vaccine
I'm
that
gonna
is
laugh at the
published.
conflict of interest comment just because we know that this entire committee is
I'm
blast
talking about right now how it's supposed to work. Yeah, so that's a great point. The the previous ASIP was fired last June by Kennedy. They were replaced. All 17 members were replaced by I think it was 8 initially anti-vaxxer. Well, mostly anti-vaxxers. There's a
yeah.
couple okay people on there. There's one person who's actually qualified, and then there's a couple other people who do seem to be great evidence-based scientists. The
Mm,
rest of them are lunatics and anti-vaxxers, and they're fucking nuts.
you
I mean,
said it, I didn't,
especially
guys. She said this, they're fucking nuts, and that's these are 2 doctorate level people telling these people are fucking crazy.
yeah, I mean, they also have doctorates. Like the
Yeah.
crazy people also have doctorates. That doesn't guarantee that you're not a fucking nutcase, or
How
that you're
many of
not a
them
scammer, or that you even know what
I
you're
mean,
talking.
this is your area, so out of the people that are on the committee, okay, the other 6 or 7 people that are really just kind of lunatic crazy. How many of them are just doing this because they're opportunists and they're there for whatever financial windfall there is when this is all done or during for that matter?
Oh, I mean, all of them. They've already made
I
a
knew the
ton of
answer to the
money off
question, I just wanted to hear it from you too. So,
yeah, yeah, I mean, like, take Robert Malone, for example. He's the vice chair of the ACIP. He claims to be the inventor of mRNA vaccine technology. Not true. He did do important work that
right.
contributed to it eventually, but, like, this was like, is this possible to transfect, to basically get nucleic acid RNA into a muscle, using a fat, essentially, is what he did. He did a very early version of
Right.
a lipid nanoparticle, essentially. And that is not inventing mRNA vaccine technology, first of all. But second of all, I mean, this guy has been making bank. He makes millions off of his Substack. He has hundreds of thousands of paid subscribers. He wrote a book called Psy War that talks about vaccines as, quote, psychological bioterrorism and claims that it's essentially like an elaborate MK Ultra type plan to implement mind control for like the globalist cabal that's going to rule us all. And I think that's always ironic that they're into this stuff because that's who they're actually working for
Mhm.
now.
Right.
Like guess
The
what?
global
That's
yeah,
what MAGA is.
right.
So, it's crazy, but Like, that man is the second in charge of this panel, and what ACIP does, and we never got to this, what ACIP does is actually really, really super important. They make recommendations on vaccines that have been FDA approved. So the FDA regulates the vaccines.
Right.
The ACIP tells people how they should be used, and they do this based on evidence. And they use two things called the GRADE framework, which is how they evaluate the evidence in a standardized way, and the ETR framework, which is called evidence to recommendations, where they
Mhm.
take those findings and they translate them into a recommendation that the ACIP then votes on. Public comments, like what I gave, you actually only get 3 minutes and no on camera stuff. There's very strict rules about no on camera on the Zoom. But you can, the public will make a comment.
Right.
The expert liaisons and the community liaisons and the pharmaceutical company liaisons will make a comment. And then the ACIP votes on these recommendations. If the CDC director signs them, they become the official recommendations. And it's more important that it's not just that they're recommendations. Like, a recommendation is like, you should do this, and that's what they are. But it also determines which insurance companies or which vaccines insurance companies will reimburse for. It also determines which vaccines are covered by the VFC, or the Vaccines for Children program, which is responsible for about 50% of childhood vaccinations in this country, which is why moving these 6 vaccines to shared clinical decision making, which is what Kennedy did on January 5th, is effectively actually descheduling them, because what they said was, now it's a decision that you have to make with your doctor. So whereas somebody could just go and say the CDC recommends that my kid get this vaccine, now they actually have to go to their doctor and say, do you recommend that my kid gets this vaccine so that I don't have to pay out of pocket for it?
Right. So what this does, and this leads me to my original question, is how does this blow a hole in our national defense public health policy? So
Yeah. So
yeah,
this is Eric, this is why it is so hard to talk about this, because to even help people understand how these things relate to each other, you just have to like give a whole
right.
crash course. And like,
We just
would
have
you
to
like to
spend
hear
10
about
minutes
how
on this. Right.
vaccine policy gets made in an evidence-based way?
Right.
I mean, these ACIP meetings now are like a fucking Real Housewives episode. It's insane. I know so much about Robert Malone's benign prostate hyperplasia. It's not even funny, because he talked about having to go to the little boys' room so frequently at the
Oh
last
my
ACIP
god.
meeting. But the fact is, this is not, even though this is like turned into a joke of what it used to be, it's not funny at all.
No, it's not.
Because the same attitude that propelled these people into the positions that they are in now, the same attitude that Kennedy considers essentially gospel, the entire like theme and goal of Maha is to prevent people from getting vaccinated. And it is to take these
Make
vaccines
sick.
away from people and discourage them from getting vaccinated at any cost. And what happens then is you get these gradually expanding populations of vulnerable people. And this applies whether it's kids or adults, whatever vaccine it is. The longer it goes on and the more people decline to get vaccinated, the larger these groups become. And now we see like what we're seeing in South Carolina. There are so many kids that are unvaccinated that measles gets in there once and boom, the whole community is taken up. When
So if
that
clean
happens, there's huge demand on the healthcare system. And when there's huge demand on the healthcare system, if something else happens and somebody needs that same equipment, that same staff, that same expertise from the healthcare system. Like, say, what if there was a flu pandemic in the middle of a measles epidemic? Then you're already going to have all of those same respiratory, those ventilators, those respiratory units, that respiratory staff, and that medical expertise that is skilled in dealing with these issues. They are going to be busy with all those cases of measles pneumonia that are in the critical care unit in the ICU. So they are not going to have space to handle an emerging disease outbreak like what flu would cause. That
and this
sort of thing would be absolutely disastrous.
and think about this, everybody that's out there. It's just when you go to your local hospital, the pediatric unit is tiny compared to the regular medical surgical units in the ICUs. If you're lucky, you live near a level 2 trauma center, which would have a pediatric ICU, but most people don't live near a level 2 trauma center. Most have, if they're lucky, they'll have a level 3 municipality community hospital that would have to be life. I mean, this is where stuff like this puts a massive strain on the local healthcare system, and
It's
it's
huge.
huge.
And
So, with that in thought, I want because we've talked about measles a little bit. So, talk about the replication rate of measles compared that to SARS-CoV-2. Okay. And then what happens and what we're seeing now with the recent numbers that I just saw them last week, where I think we're at like almost 1,000 cases already this year. And the projection going through the rest of 2026 based on the current rate of non-vaccination and how that is going to affect us moving into next year, into the next flu season, really, which is going to be September, October.
yeah, so I want to just check something with you factually really quick. When you say replication rate, do you mean like the reproduction number?
The reproduction number, yeah,
The R not? Okay.
the R not, yeah, the R
Um,
not.
in virology, the replication rate would be how fast the virus
Listen,
moves around.
I'm just a
Slightly
surgeon.
different
I'm
thing.
I don't know these things. That's why you're here. I
No
don't
worries. I just have to
I'm the
make
dumb,
sure.
dumb surgeon. I'm the one that cuts everything out. I'm good. So just
I mean,
correct me
I'm
all you
not an
want.
epidemiologist, and R not is an epidemiology thing, although I
I
can.
am not an epidemiologist, so
I am a virologist, though, so I just want to make sure if I was going to talk to you using the virology term or the epi term. But I thought you meant the epi term, and yes, you're correct. So here's one big thing to think about for people about this, and I think about it again, not as an epidemiologist, as a virologist, but when you have a virus like measles, measles is incredibly infectious. And
mhm,
so measles has an R naught of 12 to 18. The R naught is a measure of how many people one infected person will then go on to infect. So a person with measles will infect 12 to 18 people. Now, a person with SARS 2 or COVID um, probably will infect far fewer people. However, so the R naught, it depends though.
but extrapolate
And
to
here's what gets complicated about it. It's called overdispersion. So
yeah,
COVID is the kind SARS-2 is the kind of virus where most people will only spread it to one or two other people. But occasionally you get a super spreader who ends up infecting a lot more than that.
but
With measles though, everybody is effectively a
yeah,
super
so
spreader.
extrapolate that to an elementary school. Say
So
with
if
like
you have an elementary school
K through
in
5,
South
yeah,
Yeah, in South Carolina, and that's where this is being driven because these are not people who didn't vaccinate their babies last year. These are people who didn't vaccinate their kids, 5 to 7 years ago. So these are elementary school children, and that's one reason why it's spreading so fast. But one real reason driving this, according to their state epidemiologist, is that in some of these places, they have removed essentially all restrictions to exemptions from vaccines, and they've removed vaccine requirements in some places. In some of these schools, the vaccination rate is well below 95%, is below 90%. And in some schools, the private schools, it's 20%. I mean, my eyes popped out of my head when I read that. I thought I was reading it wrong. But it is 20%. And so when you have that many kids, all
ugh,
coming together in the same community in their elementary schools and then going off and, playing sports, doing stuff because measles can start spreading before you get really sick and are aware that you have measles. You don't get the rash first thing.
no.
It can just spread like wildfire in a community, and that's why we're less than 2 months into the year, and we've already got over 1,000 measles
And
cases.
what percentage of kids that catch measles will wind up hospitalized?
It depends. This depends a lot, actually, on how old those kids are, and it depends.
Same population of elementary school kids, the current most exposed at highest risk.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of question that I actually hate answering, Eric, because I'm not a clinician and I'm not a pediatrician, and there are a lot of
I said 20
different risk
uh,
factors that can sort of determine that. But I mean,
20
I think something like that. It's a higher percentage than what you would think. Now, I mean, of course, it's a smaller percentage of that where there's like a requirement for a ventilator. And it's a much smaller percentage than that. I think it's 5% or less of that who will end up developing measles and encephalitis, which is also really,
being
really.
hospitalized. I'm just talking about the where the parents freak out and then they gotta take their kid to the hospital. Like, that's
Okay. That number is probably much higher.
yeah, that
But,
actually require inpatient admission for monitoring and stabilization, and before they get the
right.
place, before they need to go on a ventilator, I'm thinking it's somewhere between 20 and 25% that
Yeah.
yeah,
Of And I mean, I think it depends on the community a lot. Like, so this is one thing that I think is really characterized these measles outbreaks that have been happening since the one started in Texas. And a big part of this is actually the current administration and the propaganda that they're spreading. In Texas, this is a religious community that is already sort of distrustful of the medical system and the public health system. They, do not vaccinate, not exclusively because of distrust. It's more complicated than that, but it's not really because of religious reasons. It's more skepticism of
Propaganda.
government mandates.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, it's the propaganda. I mean, I I will never forget how I felt when I watched the Children's Health Defense video of the parents of the first girl that died of measles in Texas saying that they would not immunize any of their children. It was God's will. They have 5 more children, and measles cures cancer. I mean, it was heartbreaking to me because those people are grieving their child, and we have professional propagandists. Children's Health Defense is the anti-vaccine organization that Kennedy founded.
Mhm.
We have them on the ground sticking a microphone in these grieving parents' face and telling them this vaccine could have killed your other children too, and having them say things about the vaccines that will actually cause other children most likely to get measles and
And the
put
scary
themselves
part
away.
is that those parents are not gonna be held accountable for the death of that child, which is a preventable death, right? But at the same time, if that same mother gets pregnant and has an abortion or the baby dies in utero, she could be arrested for murder in Texas.
In Texas, yes. I mean, I certainly don't agree
That's
with
what I
the
want you to
hypocrisy of any of those
and
policies.
yeah.
I don't think that parents should be held accountable. I don't think that a good approach for solving this problem is to blame the parents. I think the problem, and this is constantly coming up. Oh, you lost trust. Like, oh, you said something wrong during the pandemic. People love to like throw old tweets from like early 2020 at me and be like, see, you were wrong. Like, you've been wrong since day one. Sure, I'm wrong about a lot of things, like, and I try to be upfront about that. Nobody's perfect all the time, but that's not why the public lost trust in doctors and medicine and science. Public lost trust in doctors, medicine, and science because these motherfuckers have been lying about us
Right.
nonstop. Just like they're lying about vaccines, they're lying about the risks that we face, and they're lying nonstop so that they can take our money and kill us
No, they want us poor, uneducated, and sick.
and unable to fight back.
Correct. Because if we're not educated, we're easier to control.
Correct.
And that's guys, this is right out of the Franco playbook in Spain. This is out of the playbook from Hitler in 1930s Germany. This is the same thing that Mussolini did. It was even the same thing Stalin did, you
Well,
know,
bad news, guys.
Erdogan,
I'm a
Xi.
professor. All I do is educate people. So get ready for some propaganda busting education. I mean, this is no, seriously, Eric, this is like why
It's serious
I
shit.
wish that I could just focus on my work right now in this day and age. Like my life for a variety of reasons is so unbelievably stressful right now. This is
So
not a good time for fascism to come back.
no.
However, that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, vaccination and public health is the mechanism by which it's coming back.
So I had a question that I wanted to ask you. Not it's in the same realm, but we're gonna kind of change gears a little bit here. But like, and this was a question I wanted to ask you that we didn't really go over in our talk last week, which was, so do viruses always evolve, or and do they become less lethal over time, or is that just a common misconception?
That's a common misconception. Viruses do always evolve. They are I find it very tedious. There is an academic debate over whether viruses are alive or not because they are not able to replicate on their own. They are
Hmm.
obligate. What's that?
Need a host.
Yeah, they need a host. They're obligate parasites.
Argument would be no, and that's why they need a host, and that's
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's what that's the argument. I agree with that argument generally, but obviously they're also biological. They have, DNA or RNA genomes. They follow the same evolutionary rules that the rest of us do. What makes viruses able to mutate quickly, like SARS-2, why are there so many variants? Why is flu always changing? Blah blah blah. RNA mutates very quickly because it doesn't have basically a proofreading enzyme that can spell check it essentially when it's copying itself. It also RNA viruses have very small genomes generally. So a mutation in an 8,000, nucleotide long, ATCG long viral genome will have a bigger impact than one in our 3 billion nucleotide long human genome. So mutations mean more in viral genomes and they occur. So yes, viruses evolve, but do they get more pathogenic or less pathogenic? That really depends a lot on the host.
Correct.
Because just like all of us, they are subject, like I said, to the same evolutionary rules. And one of those is selection pressure. So, whatever host they're in, like let's say a virus gets into, let's say it's SARS 2, but it's proto SARS 2. I'm in the Juanan Market doing some shopping and I'm right by the raccoon dog stall. Boy, all the lab leak people are going to get so mad about this little story. But yeah, I'm shopping for raccoon dogs and I pop by the raccoon dog stall and I pick one up and I get SARS too. I'm the index case. I start the pandemic, but I don't get sick or I don't get that sick. And maybe that's because the virus actually isn't replicating that well in me. It can replicate in me, but not that well. It's still got to adapt a little bit. Is it going to get more pathogenic because of that? The selection pressure it's dealing with is a fitness question. We'd call that a fitness question as a virologist. It needs to be able to replicate efficiently. It does not need to make me sick. It doesn't give a shit if I'm sick or not. Like a virus doesn't think. A
It's
virus
a
is
it's a
basically
nutrient
a
mechanism to replicate.
machine. Yeah, a virus is a machine
Yeah.
that's made out of biological molecules, essentially. And so it's just trying to make more viruses. It's programmed to make more viruses. Whether it makes me sick or not is incidental. And usually, I mean, this is literally what my lab studies, usually what makes you sick is actually not the virus like killing your cells. It's your body responding to the viral infection, the virus trying to get around your defenses and fucking them up so bad that you end up,
So
dying.
right, and this is the clinical so this is where the clinical part comes in. So when you are sick and you feel a little run down, low grade fever, you have a viral infection, okay?
Mhm.
Most of the time as adults, you get a viral infection. Usually it's respiratory, it's a rhinovirus, it could be a GI virus, it could be a norovirus, it could be an enterovirus. If you get nausea and vomiting, those are typically viruses. When you start getting a bacterial infection, when you physically have an abscess somewhere cooking in your body that's bacteria, you're going to get really sick. Your septic, your white count's going to go through the roof. Okay.
Mhm.
Your white blood cell count, when they draw your blood, is going to be well over 10,000. You're going to have a shift in your neutrophils versus your lymphocytes, right? Because your lymphocytes are what monitor your viral loads. Your T cells and your beta cells are going to shift if you have a viral infection versus your neutrophils, mast cells, eosinophils in your white blood cell count hemogram. The other thing is your temperature is not low grade. It's going to skyrocket to like 102, 103. You're going to be very high fever as an adult. Kids are different. Kids can go as high as 105 and then they'll go into a febrile seizure, and that's when you're sky high. But most kids, because of their metabolism, will run higher. So it's all. This is why it's so important to, like, if you guys are really sick and it's a few days and you just kind of run down and you're just tired, 95% of the time it's a viral infection. Antibiotics are going to be useless. Okay. It's just treat the symptoms, let it run its course, just get a lot of sleep, eat healthy, drink a lot of fluids. It's basically symptom management. When you really have a viral or bacterial infections, when you really need the antibiotic. And that's when, you step on a nail and you have to have a surgical
Then
IND.
you need a tetanus shot.
And you need a tetanus shot, and that's right, but that's botulism tetani, right, which is a bacteria.
Clostridium.
Clostridium, I'm sorry,
Clostridium.
but which actually Clostridium is actually, believe it or not, it's one of the greatest bacterias that can eat tissue.
Yeah,
It's a great
that's the gangrene one though.
yeah, that's what causes gas gangrene, and it's one of them. Most of the things that cause gas gangrene are gonna be more streptococcus and staph
The
and
fringens.
and right. And then there's the anaerobes like Peptostreptococcus, which they're contained within a compartment and they just start eating all the tissue inside and the gas has nowhere to go. So that's what we call an anaerobic infection. Those are the ones that are really putrid smelling when you open them up in the operating room, but not to make everybody gross and disgusting. So, but that's where I always say sometimes the best antibiotics is scalpel blade sometimes.
Yeah,
So,
no, absolutely, for especially for bacterial stuff,
yeah.
that's
So,
for sure.
we're already into, like, I can't believe this is, like, 36 minutes already. This is insane how quickly our hour goes so fast with you, I swear to God.
I
It's like
apologize, Eric, I'm a talker.
I see that, but, hey, let's talk about the Save America movement. Let's talk about the health
Yeah,
policy
sure.
science, because I think this is now we kinda talked about the bad shit with RFK and these fucksticks that are on ASIP. Let's talk about how we can start to fix this. Like, let's talk about your relationship with Save America movement, and how this is progressing and how people can get more active and involved, and let's do the public service announcement now.
Yeah, yeah, no, that sounds great.
'Cause I figured
So
this will
I'm
take about 15, 20 minutes, and we could talk for all day on this, so
Yeah, yeah, no, well, I have some updates too. So, I'm on the steering
we
committee
love
for Save
updates.
Yeah, I'm on the steering
Breaking
committee for
news,
Save
we have
America Movement.
updates.
That's not an update, actually. I've been on the Save
No, okay,
America, the SAM steering committee for a while. I'm the person who's, kinda taking the lead on public health and science issues. And, it's the new year, it's a midterm election year.
yeah,
The Save America movement
election year,
is
is there something going on that we don't know?
I mean, it's a midterm election year, so not a presidential election. But as everybody knows, and as I'm sure you're well aware in Florida, there will be an election later this year.
Oh, yeah.
The Save America movement is a nonpartisan citizens group of people who are coming together to change the current political landscape by getting these people out of office. And I think that is the most important thing that we can be trying to do right now for
I agree.
Americans. Professionally, I think that the most important thing I can be doing as, the editor in chief of a journal called Vaccine and a person
But
who has devoted my entire professional life
she
to
seen, by the way.
preventing viral infections. I feel that this is also the most important thing I can be doing because they're the same thing. They're going towards the same goal. So what we were going to do this week was there was supposed to be an ASIP meeting starting on Wednesday. And that's why I wasn't supposed to be here today, because I was supposed to be on a plane to New York where we were going to do this in studio in person. However, the blizzard had other ideas, and so did the ASIP. One thing about the ASIP is that they are so incompetent that they can't seem to get their shit together at most of these meetings. And this time they couldn't even get their shit together to deposit a notice in the Federal Register. So the meeting got postponed,
God.
unclear when it's going to be rescheduled for. I checked this morning. They have just deleted the spring meeting altogether from the
Oh,
CDC's
isn't
website.
that nice?
So instead, we've got an alternate activity happening this week that I think is going to be really exciting. And I think it's just as important. It is the confirmation hearing before the Senate Help Committee of Casey Means, MD, the Surgeon General nominee. Now,
Oh,
Casey Means is a functional medicine grifter whose weird brother, Callie, sometimes gets into my Twitter replies and is also Kennedy's one of his senior advisors. He's a former wedding dress entrepreneur who knows fuck all about food and nutrition and health, but operates a company that allows you to exploit your federal spending account benefits to buy luxury items like
this is her, everybody.
yeah, that's his sister, Casey. So
That that's the
she's a
case.
doctor
Right.
who dropped out of her surgical residency
Yeah,
right before she was about to complete it because she was too stressed out. And so, to deal with all this stress, she had to go become an Instagram wellness influencer who has her own company in which she sells unnecessary blood glucose monitors that you can go to her brother's company to buy with your FSA money. And she sells you glucose monitors that you don't need, lab tests that you don't need, apps that you can use then to interpret all of that data, and then, of course, supplements to treat these fake ailments that are causing you problems. So that's going to be the new Surgeon General. She was supposed to testify in a committee hearing last November, and then they scheduled it, the day she was supposed to go into labor. And what do you know? She did go into labor. So she was not able to do it, but she's showing up. So what's going to happen is we are going to have, starting at 9 a.m. Eastern on Wednesday, we are going to have an hour of me and my colleague, Jessica Malati Rivera, who is an epidemiologist and a brilliant science communicator, explaining who these people are,
right.
explaining what they're doing, explaining why the Surgeon General is actually important, And then we're going to be fact checking our confirmation hearing in real time. We're going to be holding the senators, especially the Republican senators on the Health Committee, accountable because we know that they won't hold themselves accountable with facts and with evidence. And Jessica and I are fun and funny, I think. So it's going to be a good time. We're going to have some of our special expert friend guests pop in and join us. And then afterwards, with Sam, we are going to do essentially a wrap up show where we're talking about everything that's kind of going on in public health right now. And separately, Jessica, myself, and many of the people, my colleagues who've gotten involved in SAM, are going to really be stepping up our efforts to make sure that we're addressing the questions and the concerns that people have about what is happening in public health, because a lot of this stuff is really boring and it's really hard to understand. So you need to talk to people about it who are going to make it at least a little, hopefully less boring and also accessible
Right.
and not be dicks about it.
Let me give everybody a
So,
little bit of background on her because I know, like, I'm sure everybody can Google her right now, but here's the deal. So she went to Stanford University for medical school, and in a nutshell, um, she basically never finished her residency as in ENT. So the reason why, and technically, she shouldn't even be allowed to sell any medical devices online because, in a nutshell, she doesn't have a DME number. She doesn't have an active NPI. She technically cannot write. She couldn't write for a butt ring to get filled at your local CVS Walgreens for a, if you have a hemorrhoid. Like, that's
there's
literally
a
like,
there's a question about whether she can be the Surgeon General if she
and she
doesn't have
should
an
not be
active
the surgeon
medical
general because
license.
she never finished her residency. She's not board certified. Functional medicine is not even a true residency training facility. There's no board certification in functional medicine that's
Er-
approved by the ACGME.
Eric, can I ask you a question
It's
as a clinician? Is functional medicine real? I don't think it's real. I think
okay,
it's made
so
up.
it's
I mean,
made up. So,
it's collecting data.
well, yes and no. So there's a point in orthopedics where we do some level of functional medicine evaluation, and I tell it to the patients it is functional medicine because I'm actually muscle testing. And I'm actually assessing muscle function if I'm checking their,
Yeah.
psoas muscle, and, like, it's like when I see a patient with plantar fasciitis, it's one of the first things I check is I lay them flat and I do a functional capacity evaluation, which is really like functional medicine.
Right.
I'm still gonna treat it based on orthopedics, right? But I'm not treating it from a functional medicine standpoint, I guess. It's
No,
like,
I mean, I think that there's a difference. I do functional analysis when I get
yes,
transcriptomic data back to look at biological function, but it's because I'm looking at specifically what is the function of these genes.
but right. But
And
to
in your
define
case,
let
you're
me define
testing the function
let
of
me
those muscles, but
right.
as a discipline,
Right, no,
like,
it's not. So here's the
yeah.
deal. So functional medicine, for the 77 people that are viewing right now, functional medicine is basically an MD or a DO, okay? Or another trained nurse practitioner or PA. Technically, it could also be a podiatrist, okay, DPM, but it has to be some sort of licensed medical professional. So the whole idea is using a holistic root cause approach to chronic illness. They're supposed to use conventional treatments with
Mhm.
lifestyle, nutrition, and functional medicine certification. Now, let me say this. It's a functional medicine certification. It's not board certification. There's a big difference between having board certification like I have in foot and ankle surgery, right?
Mhm.
Versus having board certification as an otolaryngologist or what we know as an ENT, which is what she should have had, right? And then so there's a level here of the fact that she hasn't held a medical license since 2019, okay? And she's gonna be the chief medical officer of the United States.
Yeah, and she's going to be in the commission core of the public health service. She's going to be the head of it.
She'll be the head of the commission corps. She will hold the rank of basically Surgeon General. She'll that will be her title. She'll be the Surgeon General of the United States and lead the public health corps. And somebody who's also in the public health corps, I'd have a really hard time saluting her and taking an order from her. I really would have to kinda tell her, "Go fuck yourself. I'm
I mean,
sorry, but you're not a real physician. You haven't practiced medicine. Go fuck it. Get out of my hospital. Get out of my
well,
fucking way."
have you
So,
seen some of the things that she said? Like she should not be anywhere near
no,
she shouldn't
no.
be making recommendations on Instagram, much less, from the head of the public health service. And that is one of the main functions of
Johnny
the
Jackson
Surgeon
held a medical
General.
license.
Like, nobody's heard of the ASIP, right? Like,
Right.
they make the recommendations, but up until all of this shit show started happening, nobody, except for people like me, had really thought that much about ASIP. It wasn't, I've been to ASIP meetings pre clown show. And I mean, it was not an exciting couple of days if you're
No, it's
not
not. I've
into
been to
vaccine
NICACs, it's the same
safety
thing.
data.
The NICACs suck. They're like the same thing. It's the same brutal. Yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
But it's the
but
work
it's
that we have to do.
necessary.
Right,
It's
it's the
it's
work we
when
have to do.
it's boring, you know that it's actually
Right,
working effectively. But
right.
the Surgeon General is like the ASIP that people recognize. Like, nobody knows that the ASIP is making vaccine recommendations, but they certainly know what the Surgeon General is warning against. They
I wonder if
certainly
she's
know
gonna pull
also what the Surgeon General is recommending.
they should take the label off the cigarettes and the alcohol bottles?
I wouldn't, honestly, I seriously wouldn't be surprised if at some point they were like natural tobacco. Like, it is
Oh, you
just
mean
one of the
marijuana?
best things you could do, like, for your
Yeah, no
respiratory
tobacco.
system. It's cleansing and it's natural. Like,
And
the only
natural
thing is
cocaine
you
too.
can't use those highly processed cigarettes and you can't vape. Definitely don't use anything that's synthetic nicotine. Got to be all natural. That'll address the root causes of your asthma, I'm sure. I mean, some of this stuff, like, it sounds ridiculous. And, like,
Oh, no.
I think a lot of people get brought into this and they're like, oh, well, what's the harm of letting people decide for themselves? If they want to kill themselves, then go ahead and kill themselves. But I'm sorry, like, people I don't think want to kill themselves generally. Nobody goes on, a diabetes ending diet with type 1 diabetes because they want to die. They go on it because they don't want to be on insulin for the rest of their
Right,
lives and they're looking for a better solution. And
right.
these people are lying to them and putting their lives at risk.
Lying to
And
them
that to me is the thing that I mean, it goes beyond like you're just unsuitable for the job. You're actively harmful for the job and you're going to kill people in this job. And like that to me is unacceptable for, the nation's top doctor.
there's a lot of, like, but that the and this is where, as a physician, this is a really conflicting thing for me because I understand from the policy standpoint, the job of the Surgeon General is to give factual information from the federal government routed through HHS, right? Routed through the secretary's office and down, whether it's through CMS and Medicaid, through Medicare, Medicaid services, through the VA system, through whatever, right? Through the CDC, through the NIH, through the various, health organizations that we have and the agencies within the country to educate the public. So what does this happen? So we, if all this goes down, let's just say she gets confirmed, right? We are now looking at the possibility of having a complete dipshit twat head as Surgeon General, having a heroin snorting, bear eating secretary of HHS. We have a snake oil salesman as the CMS administrator. I have a book burning, cost cutting, slashing dickwad as the deputy administrator of CMS in John Brooks. Okay. I mean, this entire, like, this is my theory, and it's coming true actually, that the whole point of Dear Leader nominating RFK Jr. to lead HHS was to not lead HHS, but was to destroy HHS, was to destroy the infrastructure of our healthcare system to the point where you're seeing what we're seeing in South Carolina, Mississippi, Texas. I think we're starting to see cases now in Virginia and North Carolina of measles. It's just going to start there. We're heading into the spring, which means we're going to see summer camp I mean, think about all these kids that go to summer camp, and these are in rural parts of states in the Carolinas and Pennsylvania and New York and Michigan and Illinois, Wisconsin, right? Like, it's literally going, I mean, imagine being a parent and you send your kid to summer camp in North Carolina and find out that they're in the ICU at Wake Forest University because they were bunked with a kid that was not vaccinated, right? This is not what parents need to be worrying about when they send their kids to summer camp, right? And it's
It's
just
not what
like,
anybody
and
should
I'm
be
talking
worried
like
about.
a whole problem here. Like, not most parents can't afford to send their kids to summer camp in North Carolina, but this is one of these issues, or even just a day camp up the road. And what happens come next fall when we're next September, and all these kids are coming back to school, and now what are they bringing in with them from all the now that maybe mumps starts coming back and rubella starts coming back and God knows what else. And we're starting to see a blow up of whooping cough, or diphtheria, God
We've
forbid,
are I mean, even infant tetanus
typhoid.
infant tetanus is on the rise. I mean,
Yes.
you know what? If you want to have nightmares, go look up infants with
Oh, it's
tetanus.
brutal.
I
Ugh.
mean, I
Actually,
don't even like
everybody
to think
don't
about
look
it.
it up. The photos are just too grotesque to watch. You can't.
They're horrible,
You can't.
horrible,
I'm just
and, like,
like
your
trigger
child.
warning everybody, don't look it up. Don't.
Yeah, don't look it up, but you know what? Do if you're thinking that you would want to emulate somebody like Katie Miller, who said that none of their kids are vaccinated and they love to eat dirt, because guess what? That's how your kid gets fucking
Yeah,
tetanus.
but guess what? Katie Miller and her dipshit fuck twat racist husband live on a
They probably
military
do actually vaccinate their
and they
children,
do vaccinate their
actually.
kids because they live on a military base, which means they have to be vaccinated.
Good, valid point. And also, Kennedy vaccinated all of his kids. All
Yes,
these
he did.
people actually
So did
vaccinate
Trump.
their children
All of
because
Trump's grandkids are vaccinated.
they know how bad these diseases are.
Yep.
They don't care how bad these diseases are. And as you said, Eric, that is exactly the point. They want to destroy HHS just like they want to destroy most of the federal government. That's why throughout the federal government, but especially in HHS and RFK Jr., they have found somebody who is uniquely unqualified, but therefore extremely qualified
Oh,
to
yeah.
take the entire thing apart. But you know what? And I mean, I think that people really need to understand this part too. This is not destruction for the sake of destruction. This is destruction for the sake of theft, massive theft of our tax dollars at the expense of our Constitution, illegally impounding most of the budget, as
Yep.
much of the budget as possible from the Department of HHS into the executive branch, not being congressionally
$1
appropriated as
billion
the
dollar Medicaid
Constitution
cut.
requires.
$1 billion Medicaid cut. Where do you think it went?
Not to anybody to improve their health, that's for sure.
So
I guess maybe you went to eating real food.
so we've had a couple questions in the chat that I want to really address because I know everybody's getting a little rambunctious in the chat about not getting their questions asked. So one of the first ones is, um, so there's a lot of physicians that have been named in the Epstein files who have kept the secrets, right? They kept Epstein secrets. So to answer the question, and you're not a clinician, so I have to answer this. So it's basically the problem is that physician patient privilege rests with the patient, not with the physician. It's just like it's like attorney client. The privilege rests with the client. So as a physician, I can't speak out unless I know a crime was being committed as a result of my treatment or something was disclosed. It's not my duty to say anything, or am I allowed? And I'm not allowed to under HIPAA and physician patient privilege. So that was the first question. So I have, unfortunately, the privilege always rests with the patient.
Yeah,
Um,
and I mean, I have to say about this, I'm assuming that was about, like, the physicians that were treating,
yes,
the
like
women
Dr.
that and the
Moskowitz,
girls.
yeah, the ones at Mount
Yeah.
Sinai. Yeah,
You know, like, there are my ex-boss was named in the Epstein files. He didn't do it. He tried to get money from Jeffrey Epstein, desperately, I think, but seems like Epstein wasn't into it. Um I mean, there's a lot of people, scientists and physicians in the Epstein files. I think that we need to, the issues that you brought up are correct. I think that there were a lot more people who could have reported this at some
I
point.
agree.
So I don't think that, even that is like, I don't think it's an excuse or not. I mean, there was obviously a lot of people well aware of what was going on. In many cases, they probably were part of it. So, that's why they didn't say anything because they're fucking criminals too and
Yep.
rapists or at least
This,
enablers.
so there's another question. Gloria asked this a few minutes ago. Why would anyone believe a politician over a doctor for medical care? Because when you're uneducated and you only listen to one echo chamber, you listen to actually, it's not even the echo chamber. When you listen to your pastors, a lot of these people living in the deep South, they go to church, they get all of their information from their pastors. And if the pastor says, don't get your kids vaccinated, that's evil in them drugs. They're not going to do it. And it's unfortunate because that's really where a lot of the crime is being committed when it comes to our public health sector is the misinformation by the churches and the use of religion spewing this poisonous shit, you know, in our society, in our cultural landscape. It's just really bad. Um, and then So I had a question for you. This is a little bit more forward thinking. So based on all the research and all the studies that you've done, do you ever see us getting to a point of having like a universal vaccination, like a universal single shot vaccine?
Oh, for everything?
Kind of
Probably
like a little
not.
Star Trekky thing, like you little hypo's
Probably
free, you know,
not.
you
No.
fill the little thing, you know.
Well, not in my lifetime with the way that, technology acceleration is going now. And guess what? AI is not going to come up with that shit.
No, AI
Because you
cannot
know
do this.
how LLMs work, and I mean, a lot of people do, I think, but a lot of people also don't. LLMs cannot make up shit reliably that doesn't already exist
Right.
because that's how they're trained. So it can make guesses, but anybody who's used ChatGPT knows that it makes shit up. That's why. So no, we can't just use that to be like, hey, how would you do this? Like, I can cook up an idea for making a one-shot vaccine just as well as Claude can, but as you pointed out, so can any science fiction writer.
Mhm.
I don't see that happening just because of the way that the immune system and pathogens work. Um, Unless like vaccine technology changes so radically that you could like give a perfect vaccine that would, cover everything. I just don't see how you could do that though. Like I'm this is like a hell of a thought experiment. Come check with me later about, where I've gotten to with this.
Yeah, and then this is the whole issue with which brings me to my last question before we close out the hour, which is so what's your message to the next generation of virologists that you've been training and run through your clinic and through your classrooms and through your laboratories and knowing that literally laboratory medicine is really under the microscope. Like what's your message to like, younger prospective scientists about moving into this type of field of, basically translational research?
I mean, I want to tell my younger early career colleagues to like keep fighting, and I do tell them that, but it's really, really hard for them. What I'd actually say, not to them, but to my colleagues, my peers, mid career and more senior than me, is more of you guys have to step the fuck up. Because if you don't, we're not going to have anything to tell our early career colleagues. They won't have a career because our profession is going to be gone. And for virology, I mean, we have two problems. We didn't get into it today, but we can talk about it some other
It could be
time.
another session. That'll definitely be
Dangerous
another
gain of
interview.
function research. And, you never mentioned when you were going off your laundry list of all the clowns at HHS, you didn't mention the NIH director and now acting CDC director, podcast Jay Bhattacharya, or FDA Commissioner Marty McCary. They both believe that the
They didn't fit in the
pandemic
clown car.
began with a
They did
lab leak. And they've now
yeah.
started lying to say essentially that
Mhm.
the US's only pandemic preparedness plan was number one, go virus hunting. Number two, do some gain of function research and juice up the viruses. And number three, get rich by making vaccines for these new viruses that you just made. That is not how pandemic preparedness
No,
works.
it's
And I
called get
don't
on a
think
plane,
any
fly to
single
ground
one of us
zero.
have ever gotten money to make a vaccine against a new virus that we had
Right.
made.
The
Like,
reason the
that's not how
reason
it works.
the reason why Zika and Ebola barely hit the US was because we had epidemiologists, virologists, and clinical scientists on the ground in Africa at ground zero containing outbreak 1.
Yeah, and we know how to deal with this.
Right,
Well, the other reason Zika didn't hit the US is because it's transmitted by mosquitoes, but
right.
and they not that many of them live in the US, but, the other thing is, I mean, we just don't have that capacity to respond to things anymore, and with the idea that,
Fun
pandemic
oh shit.
preparedness is virology research, which it's not, I mean, and it's not this one particular tiny corner of virology research. That is basically an excuse, and I didn't understand this. I've written original papers on the origins of SARS too. I'm one of the scientists that's working on this. And there is no way to remotely justify the things that they have said if you actually look at any of the evidence in with a smidge of good faith. They're not. They are saying this not because this is actually what they believe, but because this is going to be the excuse they use to shut down all the expensive research that they've been funding, not just for viruses, but for vaccines, for antibiotics, for cancer, for diabetes, for
They want it all
Alzheimer's, for
privatized.
everything.
They want it
And
all privatized research.
they
Yep.
are going to say that everything is just too dangerous. And once they're done with virology, they're going to move on to other things. And they are going to just use the same approach to say it's too dangerous. We're safety
Well,
minded. We're working on chronic disease, even though they're going to cut that research too. The only research they're going to fund is research where they already know the outcome, similar to this HPV birth dose trial that they were going to award to this group in Denmark to do a study where basically they were going to expose a bunch of African babies to hepatitis B virus in a country where 1 in 5 adults has it. That would basically condemn those children to grow up in a country which has almost zero medical care with a
I'm
chronic.
sorry. Didn't we do
Go-
this in the '60s?
we
Thalidomide?
sure did.
Didn't we do this with thalidomide in the '60s? Didn't we do this already?
We've got so much to talk about, Eric. I mean, this is something that was awarded 6 days before Christmas
Oh, yeah.
without any sort of scientific review.
Oh,
A
God.
$1.6 million grant just given by HHS and CDC to this group in Denmark to do this experiment in Africa,
Mm,
and that would endanger African children, African babies at
that's
birth. It's appalling, and like this is what's happened, and
inhumane.
it's for the sake of stealing from us. So
It's
we have a
inhumane.
lot to talk about.
It's yeah. And then final question came up in the chat was how long will it take to repair DHS and CDC? Well, HHS and CDC. You can answer the CDC part. I'll take the HHS part. Um,
I was like, DHS is easy.
no,
Just get rid of ICE.
right.
Um,
No, the HHS repair is going to take 2 decades
maybe even longer.
minimum, 2 decades,
Yeah,
because you have
minimum.
to replace all the people that were doing policy and coverage, and the people that they've cut and lost, and people that were experts in their respective fields in reviewing policy for not just say wound care, but also for cardiology, respiratory, gastrointestinal, neurology, neuroscience, spine. Across every spectrum, pediatrics. So it's going to take forever and a day.
And beyond that, I mean, there's a huge problem throughout HHS, and that is that a lot of the people who have left have now been replaced in some cases with essentially political commissars
Yep.
who are acting as censors, who will, only push through research, only push through funding that
It's
is
got to be a
politically
complete.
aligned with Maha and MAGA
It's got to
goals.
be a complete house cleaning. Like literally, like everybody. Like honestly, like the next president could basically say, "Listen, I am shutting down the federal government for 30 days. We are going to clean out every agency. Everybody's going to be reviewed. We're going to take 30 days to get it all done. I'm directing all the agency directors, the acting agency directors to start cleaning house. And it's the only way it's going to get fixed because this has been, and CDC is even worse, I think, because they pretty much dismantled the CDC. So
The
it's
CDC's dismantled and FDA's not functioning either.
right.
And I'm actually a lot more worried about FDA at this point because at least there's some redundant function of the
A lot of
CDC
redundancy in FDA.
in state, local
Right.
public health offices at FDA. I mean, so many people have been gone, and the culture at FDA, from my understanding, is absolutely
Oh,
toxic.
it's
And there is no way to go against the agenda or you will get overruled by people who are bound and determined to basically strip the licenses from as many vaccines as possible and deny licenses to as many vaccines as
well,
possible. But I think this is an important point to make, Eric, because if you look at what happened with Moderna a week and a half ago, the FDA, Vinay Prasad, the nation's top vaccine regulator, um, put out a refusal to file
correct.
letter, which basically means the FDA won't review it for approval.
Right.
And that's despite like them being like, "Hey, FDA, is it cool?" And they're like, "Yeah." So this was unsurprising,
This
and
is after they,
very
this is after they went through 60 to 70 days of prior review with a different part of FDA that they came back and said, no, we're just not going to review it.
correct. And
Right.
Vinay Prasad overruled a group of
They actually pushed it forward.
yeah, and pushed it forward. But There was so much pushback. I mean, there was so much pushback that Marty McCary hilariously did a press conference that was a closed press conference. And through asking some leading questions to a reporter that I know quite well, I was able to determine that this FDA senior official who would not go on the record was, in fact, Marty. And I mean, he knew it was such a shameful decision that he wouldn't even allow reporters to be like, this is actually what the FDA commissioner says. I mean, Marty is the FDA commissioner. He's in charge of the FDA. And he would not even like go on camera to talk about this. And finally, when he did, because he can't he can't ignore the siren song of the cable news shows.
Right.
Then he went on and said that, oh, we've got some more questions and we're talking to them. And now they're going to review it. So the pushback works. Like
It does.
bringing attention
It
to this
really, really
stuff
does.
works. And that's why we're having these conversations. And that's why I plan to do a lot more of this. I think people really need to know about this. And like I said, it's boring. But if you have two people who know what they're talking about and are like tolerable to listen to, I think it can be really educational for people. And I think more than anything, what I'll say to young people is I'm going to do everything I can to rally our entire community, not just other scientists, but to rally our entire community to get behind us again. Because in 1956, when Jonas Salk released the inactivated polio vaccine, he was treated like a hero. I mean, like
Mhm.
people got out of school on the day that
Nobel
he
Prize
had
winner.
a press conference about this. It was so huge. I want to get back to the point where we're like that again. Not because I'm going to be like, hi, everybody, I'm Angie Rasmussen, like I'm on the front page of the
Nobel Prize
newspaper.
laureate.
You know, whatever. I don't actually really make vaccines. Like I know a lot about them, but I study the host response to them. So anyways, I doubt that I'll be like Jonas Salk, but I want to be at a place where we believe in science and medicine to
Yes.
make our lives better and to save our kids' lives. And so I plan to be talking about this as much and as loudly as I can up until
You
I
and
can
I
just
can
go
have a
back to
platform for
quietly
this.
pipetting and
You and I
minding
can
my
do
own
this.
business.
You and I can do this as many times as you want. You have an hour with me whenever you want it. So
That sounds great, Eric.
I
Anytime too.
I want to go ahead and do a shameless plug for all your stuff, and I know we're running a little bit over, so let's go ahead and selfishly or selflessly, however you want to phrase it, go ahead and give
Yeah,
yourself
so
a plug and hit
so
those hearts,
join us.
everybody.
Yeah, so join us at rasmussenretorts.substack.com Wednesday morning at 9 a.m., where Jessica Malati Rivera and I and the Save America movement will be covering Casey Means' confirmation hearing as if it's a football game. So please come and join us for the live play-by-play and real-time bullshit calling.
Love it. Everybody, if you are not subscribed to Dr. Angie Rasmussen, I highly suggest you hop on board. She is such a wonderful resource of information on viruses, vaccines, healthcare policy, even though she's an expat living in Canada right now. And she's just an amazing human being. That's why I wanted to have her on for an hour to talk about this stuff, because she's just a great person. So Angie, thank you so much for joining me today. This was amazing. The 2 hours we spent together, I feel like you and I can already like have like beer and bourbon and just drink it up, and
Next time it's bourbon happy hour,
we'll
like
do a
I
bourbon
said.
happy hour next
I
time. Yep.
sometimes do Substack lives with my best friend from grad school, and we have like a pathogen themed cocktail for each of them. Last time was measles martinis or Manhattans, but it was a bad idea because like we kept talking about old grad school stuff and like kind of didn't forgot to talk about measles. So
It's awesome. I
we have
love
to
it.
watch ourselves. But yeah, let's do bourbon next time.
And as for me, everybody, again, Dr. Eric Lullove, you can follow me at Dr. Lullove at Substack. I have no paywall, so everything for me is free birdie stuff. I will be posting my bread of the week later this evening. I'm not going to disclose it. Dr. Angie already knows what it is, but she can't say it. She signed an NDA last night.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right.
so yeah, so everybody knows. So I'll be doing my bread of the week on Mondays with the recipe posted on Tuesdays. So y'all can have fun. Just trying to get everybody a little bit easier to like, if you can make a few things bread wise, survival instinct kind of stuff, it's great. Also tune into Blue Ant Media at between now and 6 p.m. for the Matt Show, sponsored by Blue Ant Media. And again, tune in during the week for the Gen Xe Show with Lawrence and Dana. Melissa on Mondays for Counter Story Media. and then Cliff Schechter and David Schuster for Amped Up, and then always at Fridays at 2 o'clock with Ellie Leonard, our favorite Epstein researcher extraordinaire on Fridays at 2 o'clock. And everybody, thank you so much for joining. Appreciate all 116 of you that joined in, and this will be republished on my feed. And again, Angie, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure, Eric. Anytime.
Thank you. Everybody have a wonderful rest of the day.